Hello, Henry here, and welcome back to another round of tier listing Soul. And this time around, we are going for the Orc Greenskin tribe army. So I'm gonna give you my opinion on the strength of the Greenskin army. And this is in itself, let's say, self-contained. So it's going. I'm going for how good is the troop compared to other troops you can get as the orcs. In my opinion, the orcs are, well, I think one of the weaker actually troops, because they have some shock troops, but they don't have, in my opinion, any great line holding units like the dwarves and the abyssals have. And they don't have any range, they don't have any machines, they have good cavalry, shock cavalry, and they've got some monsters, but in the same vein, others have better of those. So overall, I don't see the orcs or the greenskins as very, very strong troops, but I want to list them or rank them compared to each other and not to other troops. So let's begin with the first three, and these are your leaders. So you've got the option for the War Chief, who's got a hand weapon with shields and Warcry as a specialty. Warcry gives you a one-time activation per battle, and in the round of this battle, where you activate it, every one of your troops actually gets to reroll. Was it reroll? No, they have all more power. Yeah, right. One more power per turn for your troops, which is okay, but not the be all end all. And stats wise, you can see that compared to the Goblin Shaman, your other standard non-DLC troop, you see that you've got one more skill, one more power, one more defense, and one more attack, and one more discipline. So you are the better melee guy. Compared to the Goblin King, you got one more defense, and that is it. Otherwise, the Goblin King is the melee guy to the goblins, or for the goblins. And yeah, the War Chief comes with a retinue of warriors. So Orc warriors accompany him, so you get a melee line troop from the get-go. The Goblin Shaman is your caster. He is, in fact, starting with short bows. So Goblin short bows come with him. And he's not a melee guy, he is a caster. So leveling up, he gives you access to spells, and spells are OP, I would say. And you can see, the difference to the War Chief, of course, is that you are way, way worse, and you've got Goblin shortbows. And Goblin shortbows in melee also are worse than warriors. Your first spell you get for free is Primal Fury, and you can target a unit, and the unit has then one more power and reroll missed attacks for this turn. And that is, I think, if I remember correctly, a one-time use per battle, but you get access to other spells. The Goblin King is your melee goblin. He, as far as I recall, doesn't get access to spells right away or through leveling. And he has hand weapon and shields, so he gets, same as the War Chief, an extra defense on top. So he's a bit worse than the War Chief, but he gets the Power of Many. And the Power of Many is a spell you can activate once per battle. And once per battle, this gives your goblins fearlessness. So fearlessness does the following: you roll on your discipline if you lose, and if you are fearless, you ignore any kind of negative marker or points, and you just roll on your own discipline combined with the depth of your troops. So for example, a goblin mob with 5 discipline and 3 rows deep gives you 8 discipline, I think. 7 or 8, I think it should be 8. And you would roll on an 8 instead of whatever 8 minus whatever your loss was. So if you lose a fight, you get a negative on the discipline, and also the rerolls on discipline also don't work on fearlessness. So in that way, that's the spell the Goblin King gets. If it comes to ranking, I would say the War Chief is fine. I would put him again as B tier, just like with the dwarves. He's sturdy enough. With his Orc Warriors, you get a nice little base line of troops in the middle. You can battle, you can upgrade him to a really offensive machine. If you put him on something else like a mount, he becomes your shock cavalry, hitting hard, not getting hit. So he's good enough, and at the same time, I don't think he's anything special. He's your go-to in the middle of the pack leader for the goblins. Then I would take actually let's go with the Goblin King. The Goblin King I would in fact put below the War Chief. Reason being, and hear me out. This is my reasoning behind this. He's a worse version of the War Chief. He doesn't. He has the same hand weapons and shield, and they both have a cry. The War Chief has the War Cry with the +1 power, and the Goblin King has the power of many, which makes goblins fearless. And then he loses the 1 defense, and that is it. So he's a bit worse than the War Chief. He doesn't get access to the spells the Goblin Shaman has. So in fact, he's just a little bit worse than the War Chief, and I think it's a flavor thing, but to me, the power of many just doesn't cut it. Fearless goblins is in itself an oxymoron in my opinion, because, well, look at the discipline of the goblin mob, the goblin spear, the goblin short bows, and the goblin wolf riders. It's 5 as the baseline. That is not it. If the goblin mob now, let's say you have 20 troops of goblin mobs and you put them into 4 rows of 5, that's 4 rows, you got 9 discipline. That's good enough, and if you lose a round, you probably lose one of the rows of the goblins, and you will maybe then have 8 discipline, and you roll against 8 discipline, which is good and fine and way better than 5 for sure. But it's only once in the battle and 1 time activation only, and then it's gone. And for that, I don't think it's quite worth it, and it is not so great. In the same vein, of course, you can argue that the Warcry with his 1 time activation is also not it. It's fine, but that's why I would take the War Chief before the Goblin King. I see an argument to say, well, they are equal to each other. The one has the Goblin power, the other has the War Cry. It's fine, but I would put him here. I would rather take the War Chief than the Goblin King. Then we go for the Goblin Shaman, and yeah, he is worse on the defensive side, for sure, and on the melee side, but he gets access to spells, and access to spells gives him, in my opinion, the upper hand over the other 2, and it's the reason why I used him to win the challenge mode with the Greenskins, because he gives you the ability with level ups to get into spells or learn spells on the blacksmith, and spells are OP. They help you out quite a lot. For example, getting defense down on the enemy gives you a chance with your goblin mob to bash onto bigger targets like trolls, giants, whatever, get them down, cut them to size. It helps out a lot, and offensive spells in the same way do really, really big damage. So I take the less strong Goblin Shaman over the War Chief because of the spells you get. The Goblin Shaman also starts with his short bows, so the short bows are okay and not the best, but at least it's range, so you don't have to go into melee, and it's fine. I would rather take Orc Warriors, but thematically, of course, you get goblins with goblins. So this is for the leaders, and I would prefer a Goblin Shaman because of the magic to any of the melee guys, and the War Chief and the Goblin King, you can argue about both of them being on the same level, but I prefer the War Chief over the Goblin King because of the bit more defense, and the spells don't cut it either way for me. That brings us to the melee, and for the orcs, I think it's a rather lackluster melee troop thing. So for the orcs being a big mass of guys, I think data just don't cut it. The Orc Warriors, let's go through the stats. They've got hand weapons and shields, so already they get 1 extra defense on top of their base stats of 3 skill, 4 power, 3 defense, 1 attack, 1 wound, and 6 discipline. The Orc Brute is the upgrade to that. The Orc Brute gets the same stats except for a +1 defense, which equals out the loss of the hand weapon and shields. So they got the same defense as the Orcs. And you get 1 more discipline. And on top of that, you get heavy armor and great weapon. So heavy armor gives you another defense, which is 5. And the great weapon gives you the 1 power and the charge bonus. That is good. And that makes them, of course, better than the Orc Warriors. And these 2 melee guys, I would always take the Brutes over the Warriors, as the Brutes have more discipline and better defense. And the Goblin Mob, if you hold that against them, you can see that it's the worst version of, or a worst version of the Orc Warriors. So the Orc Warriors have better defense by a lot. So the Goblin Mob gets only 2 defense, which is nothing. 5 discipline, 1 less than the Orcs, and 1 less power even. So you get more troops, a bit more troops than the Orc Warriors, but in the same vein you get worse troops. And the Goblin Spear Mob even loses the hand weapon and shield extra defense, so he is down to actually 2, not 3 like the Goblin Mob. And they have the same stats, and they are basically the defensive version of the Goblin Mob. So the offensive version. The Goblin Mob gets an extra defense, and the Goblin Mob gets the spear, which means that when you're not charging, you get an extra row of attacks in, and that's it. So these are your melee options. And if we go by that standard, yeah, let's say the Orc Warriors had a baseline. I don't really like them. I would also call them maybe a C tier. I'm not quite sure, but let's say the Orc Warriors are your baseline. They go with the War Chief, and if they are the baseline, then your Orc Brutes are A tier. They are better, they are an upgrade, and always take the Brutes over the Warriors. They are not S tier because they can break quite easily and they can lose fights quite easily. And in fact, during my play as the Orcs and as the Greenskins, I lost with the Orc Brutes against Goblin Mobs, which is just insanely bad. And if we hold the Goblin Mob against the Orc Warriors, I would say that the Goblin Mob is C tier as well as the Spear. The difference here being you can go offensive or defensive, and I put that into quotation marks because the difference here is not that big. And both of them are not line holders. Both of them are fodder, cannon fodder, and it's better to use them just to hold the line and then bring maybe the orcs or something else into the side of the enemy. But I think this is okay. I even think about maybe ducking them all down, so the mob even staying in C, getting the warriors with them, and the brutes on B tier, because I don't like actually the melee troops of the orcs. That's not their strong suit, and if they even have a strong suit, and that's debatable. So then we come to the only range troop the goblins, the orcs have, and there's only one. We have no orc arrow boys. We have nothing. We have just the little small goblin shortbows, and these guys suck. They can't hold the line in any way or form. If they get attacked, they die. The power of their bow is miserable. So short bows have a range of 20 with a power of 3, so they don't even pierce anything. So if there's anything like a rider coming or a monster or anything in that way, even brutes and orc warriors, you are lost, you are losing. And that's why I would put them into D tier, because yeah, they are range and they are your only range, but they suck. They have a short range, you have to maneuver them, they can't even shoot over the whole field, and then they don't even have any kind of punch to it, and they will just, go down very, very quickly, and that is not what you want here. So then, once we go over not having any kind of ranged troop, which is very bad, we come to the cavalry of the orcs. And what should be their strong suit, in my opinion, is still not the greatest. And I would say that here we have the option between the Goblin Wolf Riders and the Boar Riders as your choice of cavalry. And the Goblin Wolf Riders, you can see, have 3 skills, 3 power, 2 defense, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, double wounded, and 5 discipline. The Orc Boys, the Orc Riders, have the same skill, have 1 more power, have 2 more defense, and have the same kind of attack, same kind of wound, and 1 more discipline. Have the hand weapons with shields the Goblin Wolf Riders have as well. The only difference being that the Wolf Riders get swiftness. So you get a big hitting Orc Boar Rider, and with a lot of defense because of hand weapons and shield, you have 5 defense, the same actually, or even as the Orc Brutes, and makes them as strong as the Orc Brutes. And the Wolf Riders, they are just dying like flies. And they are swift, they can move quicker, but they are a shock cavalry, and they won't survive a full frontal attack on anything. The boars maybe can do that, the wolves definitely not. You need to maneuver them around, and in fact, to win with the orcs, if you have wolves, you have to have your troops in line, and the wolves, you need to finagle and move the enemies a bit, and then get either one of those into the side of the other. Of the enemy. So get one of them to get the attention, and the other one goes into the side. That's how you win here. In that way, I would actually say that the Boar Riders, especially if you upgrade them, are A to S tier. In my opinion, yes, you lose them, you don't have many of them, but they are your bread and butter. They can carry your whole playthrough. I'm not quite sure where to put them. For now, I will put them into A, top of A. And the Wolf Riders I put into a B tier. They are okay, they do what you ask of them, but they will not hold any kind of don't have any kind of staying power. So if you use them, be aware that you will lose them quite quickly, and replenishing them can be maybe not possible. And the Goblin Wolf Riders, it's okay. I put them in B because they are average, and if they are in B, the Boar Riders are minimum in A. I even would put them again in S tier, maybe. I will think about it while we go through the other ones, and Then we come to another kind of shock troop for the orcs, and that is the Orc Boar Chariot. The Orc Boar Chariot is again or stronger than from the stats, stronger than the Boar Riders. You've got the same amount of skill, you've got the same amount of power, you've got 1 more defense, plus the hand weapons and shield, you're on 6 defense, which makes them actually the most defended troop here on the normal troops. We get 3 attacks instead of 2, and we get 5 wounds and 6 power. The thing being here, the Orc Chariot is a single unit entity with a multi-wound. The Orc Boars, you get 3 of them in the beginning and can upgrade them to, I think, 5. And the Orc Chariot is always a single target unit. They got hand weapon and hand weapons and on one side, and they've got the crushing charge. The crushing charge gives you 2 attacks extra and 2 power, so they are your shock troop. You push them into the side or into the back of the enemy. They are your hammer to whatever your anvil is in this kind of orc situation. They have no kind of staying power, so after their first charge, they are lost. Not lost, depending on the troops you are up against, you can win, but in the normal case you will lose, they will run, or they will even die in a 1-round turn. So if you go full frontal into any kind of goblin mob or anything that has more troops, the chances are you will lose them right in the first round. Which, in my opinion, because they are a single unit, I put them into C tier. I get an argument that they are B tier because when you get them in the beginning, you can get 2 of them, and two orc boar chariots are strong, and you can really push it with them. But you are dependent on crushing the enemy and dispersing the enemy. Once you get against some kind of thing that is not breakable, like let's call it orc veteran, the dwarven veterans, or let's take any kind of fearless thing, or anything that has a high discipline and you can't manage with your 5 attacks. Because on the first run you get 3 attacks plus the 2 of the crushing charge, and you can't hit with the 5 attacks, you are lost. And even with 2 orc chariots, you can use them in a way that they support each other and get into the sides or put them on both sides. But in my opinion, the orc boar chariots just don't cut it. So that's why I would put them in C tier. We can put them all the way up in C tier. I'm fine with that. But I don't see them. I'd rather take the goblin wolf riders because you get more troops with them, you get more attacks with them, and you have way more chances with the wolf riders than you have with the orc chariot, in my opinion. Which brings us to the other cavalry, monsters, the orcs. And in fact, these are your bread and butter. If you want to win with the orcs, in my opinion, you need 1 or 2 of those. So either one of those, you need 1. That is fine. If you get both, you are golden. And because of that, I would put them actually in S tier, both of them for the orcs. These are the ones you need for winning the game. The trolls are really great because they've got hand weapons and they've got regeneration, which means that when they only get 2 wounds, they regenerate the wounds. And if you're going up against something like goblin mobs or any kind of thing that doesn't do much damage and you can manage to hold with your 5 defense, you will get a replenishment and you can soak way more. And in the same way, the hill giant or the giant has a lot of defense, has a lot of power. The low number of attacks in 5 and in its standard version hold it a bit back, because if you go up against something like Goblin Mob, your 5 attacks against their 20 attacks can mean that you get a lot of wounds. You have 8 of them, so you will definitely get a few rounds out of that. It's unlikely that the Goblin Mob with their 3 skill, for example, can do anything against the giant and hit more than a few times, but the chances are here, and the fearlessness is what keeps them in S tier for me, because without fearlessness he would go to A tier. With the fearlessness you go for your 9 discipline. If you upgrade it to 10, he won't break, so he is possibly your anvil, and everything else is your hammer that goes into the side of whatever is hitting the giant. In fact, in one of my playthroughs, one of the giants with defensive rerolls, I think it was just not getting down. He was attacked in 3 sides and he just held down 3 enemy troops while I dispatched of the backline of him. So he can be your defensive anchor, your anvil. The enemy just gnaws at and can't get through. And the trolls, in my opinion, you can upgrade them with more troops and get more attacks in. So they are your big, good cavalry. If you get one of those, they are strong. If you give them even the putrid stench upgrade they get through not even randomness, but through the buying. I think 100 gold in the blacksmith gives you the stinking aura, the putrid aura, and that forces enemies to reroll successful attacks, which make them very strong. If you pair that with a random divine protection you can get, these guys won't go down. They will just eat up a lot of the attacks, and the few wounds that get through won't kill anyone, and you regenerate that. These guys can hold out for a very long time if you upgrade them, but even in their main form, I think these are the 2 that will keep you and carry you through the game. If you can get one of those in the beginning, take them. They will guarantee you at least a good run, and pair them with something else. If you get both, you're golden. Okay, then we come to the machines of the orcs, and we got two choices here. We got the bolt throwers, which are the lethal weapon against multi-wound troops, and we got the goblin stone thrower, which are your smashy machines against bigger troop enemies numbers. And yeah, that's that. And the bolt thrower has the negative that you have to roll each individual shot and have to roll on hits. So you can have rounds where it doesn't hit, especially with the 3 skill. It can miss, and the power is not as high as you would like it. So the enemy can even resist that hit. So they have the same kind of problem the dwarves have. So I would put them into C tier. They are fine. They've got lethal weapon, but they're not great. Yeah, okay, let's put them into B tier because they are your only chance to get some kind of lethal against multi-target or multi-wounded, and you get 2 of them in the beginning if you get them. It's okay, I put them into B tier because they are an option, but in the same vein that I didn't like them for the dwarves, especially because the dwarves have better options than this with the cannon, this one is not it. And if you can get anything else than this, I would take another thing. And yeah, and the stone thrower, I wouldn't take. It's situational. I have a mind of putting it into D tier, but I think C tier is fine enough. It's not as bad as the short bows, but yeah, you get 2-3 runs out of this, and then the enemy is at you, and you don't have the stats to stay, so you have to protect it, and it helps you out a bit if you have it, because it can soften up the enemy before it's at your troop side or on your side of the table, but I don't think it's worth it. I don't think the stone thrower really gives you a lot of value. So overall, the goblins and the orcs are not as strong as I would like them to be, and if you compare them to each other, this is what I think the goblin roster looks like. And yeah, you don't have any range. If you look at this ranking, my ranking at least, in my opinion, you don't have any good range attacks. You have actually none, because the short bows are just that. They are short bows, and you don't have any kind of attack pattern. The melee part is not as strong. You've got a lot of stuff in C tier here, in my opinion, that is not very strong. And the only things that really carry you through a game are the giants, the trolls, maybe the boar riders, maybe the goblin shaman with good spells, and the orc brute. If you can get any of these 5 in the S or A tier, you can have a good run. If you get trolls and upgrade them, or giants and upgrade them, they can carry you through the whole game. And I think without these 2, the orcs would be lost. So, this is my opinion on the troops of the Greenskin tribes. I hope you liked it, and again, just my opinion, yours can differ, and I hope it helps you, and I will see you another time with something else. So, bye bye.